show. You can see all of our episodes every week airing live on Friday at noon, and all of our episodes are also on themeetingspace.com under the Real Recovery Show. And today's episode is what I think is a really fun episode, partly because I don't have to have a list of questions to ask anybody. Instead, I'm going to be answering questions on the opposite seat. And joined with me to answer questions is someone who also has some long-term recovery, is Jennifer Mackey,
Hello.
Who has 20 years clean and sober off of drugs and alcohol. And I'm coming up on 24 years in January off of drugs and alcohol. And so a lot has changed over the years. We're not the people that we were. People sometimes are surprised when they hear of how my life used to be, the things I used to do, and the things that I used to ingest, and the people I used to hang with, and how sick I was. And we do little by little by little learn how to live life on life's terms in recovery, and our lives become such a complete testimony of what having a different influence and tools can do one day at a time. And so over the years, I became a sponge. I wanted to know how to do things differently, how to see things differently. I was very attracted to people who were comfortable in their own skin and who seemed to know how to live life. And I was also very attracted to people who could laugh about things that I was not thinking were very funny at the time, and were at peace about things and forgave people for things that I thought I would take to the grave and there's no way I would ever forgive. And so there's a lot of programming that we have in our minds, either growing up in addiction or any kind of dysfunction or trauma, but also whenever we start using alcohol and drugs, not only because we are self-medicating, but they say that when you start using alcohol and drugs, you stop really learning how to use real tools and have real solutions. And even our attitude is more like using alcohol and drugs to check out rather than learning how to check in and to come from our true authentic self. So I grew up influenced by people who were in addiction, and so I didn't have any clue how to have healthy relationships, how to take care of myself, what the difference between selfless and selfish is, what a good selfish is, how to meditate or anything. I didn't know how to be a caring person without self-abandoning. I could go on. And so I needed to grow up again in recovery. I needed to be around people who learned these things or somehow knew these things, and I needed to change a lot of things in my thinking. So I asked a lot of questions. And so today I get to be in the seat of being asked a lot of questions. So I get to give back a lot of what I've learned. And I feel really passionate about that. I think that's one of the reasons why I feel very passionate about having this show is for two reasons. One is to talk about things that maybe you wouldn't hear anywhere else, because we are as sick as our secrets. And to also, and the second is to also give hope and direction and tools and insight where a person might be spinning in a loop, doing the same thinking, the same behavior, and getting the same results. And so not only is Jennifer here with me today, which I'm so excited about because I love listening to her share, but we're also joined with Kira, who has 11 months clean and sober. And we're also joined with Danica, I said her name right, who has 6 months, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And so what we're going to do to start off with is we're going to ask them just to share maybe 5 minutes each about themselves, so that we're caught up with where they're at in their sobriety so far, and then they're gonna ask us questions. So it's gonna be a lot of fun. So we'll start off with you, Danica. So just share a little bit how your addiction was, your childhood or whatever, and then your sobriety.
Okay. So growing up, my mother dealt with a lot of mental illness, and she also was dealing with addiction as well. So like by the time I was 5 in kindergarten, I knew that my mother did not love me the same as other children. That and she was also very physically violent. My dad was a police officer at the time. It was always his dream career. You know, my mother's mental illness and addiction progressed, so she would start to do things like beat herself, slam her head in cabinets, and then call the police and say that my dad did it. He did get kicked off the force for that. They told him to divorce your wife, and you come back, and he wouldn't leave her. My mother left him for a woman, which during that time was not accepted. So that completely destroyed his ego, you know, and everything. And then she took me and my sister away from my dad and wouldn't let us see him. So we were living with my mother and her partner. My partner did not like me, my little sister, and told my mother, you have to choose between me or them, and my mother chose her. And they moved to Denmark and left me and my little sister behind in an empty house.
Wow.
I called my dad at the neighbor's house, and he came and got us. I was happy because I was happy to be with my dad. But unfortunately, my dad had fell into addiction himself because of what would happen with my mother and everything, and we were homeless. Wow. So now I'm with my dad, 12, 13 years old, and I have to take care of my dad and my little sister. You know, so I had to grow up really fast. And I grew up around addiction and in homelessness. My dad did emancipate me. I got a job. I worked 6 nights a week at a truck stop. And I was able to manage a little apartment with a girl that had previously graduated when I was in high school. And I would do my homework at work. I would get dressed for work. Then I would go home, get my sister ready for school, take her to school. Then I would go to school. I was still able to, even through all those trials and tribulations, I was still able to graduate with a 3.2 GPA from high school. But right after high school, I met somebody, and the first time we had sex, I got pregnant. So we decided to run off and elope here in Vegas. I was in California in my prom dress. So that didn't work. So then I came out, I left him, and I came out here with my infant child, and I was doing consumer finance, and someone suggested to me that I have a really nice body, so I should start dancing. I was going to college. I was living paycheck to paycheck. I was struggling, and so I tried it. And
how old were you at this time?
I was just turned 21.
Okay, 21.
So So I started dancing. I made really good money, and so I quit my other job. And then I met somebody in the club, and it's called Being Knocked, and he ended up trafficking me for 14 years. He was what you call a guerrilla pimp, so it was brutal, you know what I mean? And I ended up running from him to get away from him into the tunnels. Addiction and trauma kept me there. So fast forward, I was on probation now, and I didn't know about any kind of resources. I didn't know recovery existed. I really had a thought at that time that that's just was how I was going to die, was in my addiction. I was addicted to heroin, crystal, and cocaine. And I thought that the only way that I can get help and get off the streets and be clean was to go to prison. So I was going to violate myself. I was going to commit a crime and get violated and just go do my time, and I was hoping that would be my solution. Until another friend that was homeless as well told me about Shine a Light, and they said to give them a call, and I did. They came and got me. I went to Crossroads, went through the program, and then I went to Sober Living. But during this time, it had been already so many years that that I didn't have any kind of structure, you know what I mean? So it's like from moving like that, I was scared. And it was very frightening. So I ran back to what I knew. I ran back to the tunnels, and I fell back into addiction. Until I was just tired. During this time, my father passed away, who was my best friend. I was just tired, and I didn't want to do anymore. So I knew Shine a Light had been still looking for me. George Petty and Rob Bankhart, they were still out there looking for me. I had been hearing about it. I'd been kind of ducking and dodging them, but I was finally done, and so I sat down in the middle of the wash, and I waited for them to come, and they did.
So beautiful.
And Rob Bankhart found me. And so I went through detox again at Crossroads. I went up into housing. I completed the program. I graduated the program, and then I moved into Marcy Davis Sober Living, which is where I'm at now. And I'm doing very well. I love the structure. I love the accountability. It's what I need, And now I work for Nevada Homeless Alliance, and I work with Shine a Light as well.
Nice.
Nice. It's very gratifying, you know what I mean, So at Nevada Homeless Alliance, we believe in housing. Housing is a human right. And then I'm a peer ambassador, and where I go and I do an outreach. We do pop-up events. We provide housing assessments, medical assessments, all that kind of stuff, resources. Let people know, because I know I didn't know.
Right.
You know what I mean? And then we also and I also work as a PLE, which is a person with lived experience. So therefore, I give them my input, my experience to help with housing and all that kind of stuff. So we're doing a lot of great things, making difference. And then I also get to work with Katrina Grisby Tefford. She comes from a similar background. And she's getting her doctorate, and she's the director of Nevada Homeless Alliance.
Isn't that amazing?
Yes.
God, we rise up, don't we?
Yeah. So she inspires me. She shows me that women like me can really make a difference, and that we can better our lives, and that we don't have to stick with that stigma, and we don't have to always be that. We can be something greater. Dee Dee Parker, she helped me too. She was the one that drove me to Crossroads the second time, and she listened to me, and she dealt with me because I wasn't an easy person to ride with at the time. I put her through some stresses, but these people like that are just there who inspire me now, because they're really out there trying to make a difference and trying to help.
Just keep following that inspiration. Anybody who inspires you, just keep following it, because that's the light that you see in somebody else. That's a mirror of your own light, because you're going to keep inspiring people. As you keep rising up, people are going to be like, wow, if you can go from that to this, then maybe I can too.
Yeah, thank you.
So I'm glad you're on the show. And Kira?
Thank you for having me on, and thank you so much for sharing your story. Your story is so cool, and I'm so happy that you're sharing where you are now. That's so amazing. Previously, I was on the Young People in Recovery show, and I went in a little bit more in depth about my story and kind of how I grew up, how I got into addiction. But so if you want to check that out, you can. It's one of the episodes. But like she did, I grew up in a lot of dysfunction, and something that I say frequently in my recovery is I was obsessed with drugs and alcohol before I had even picked up for my first time. I remember thinking smoking weed brings you peace, and that's all I really ever wanted, was just peace. I just wanted my head to be quiet. So I had this preconceived notion of drugs and alcohol from a very young age, just trying to escape that familial dysfunction. And so I remember having this idea okay, this is what I'm gonna do, this is who I have to hang out with to have to get to it. And so that's just kind of how, and then it steamrolls, because it's addiction, it just kind of steamrolls. And I'm 21 years old, and when I decided to get sober, I was 20, and I was sober for about 3 months, and then I had a relapse. And, I'm thankful for that relapse, because that relapse showed me that I really am hopeless, you know what I mean? And that I just really didn't want to live this way. So when I came back in the second time, I was really able to give it my all and really come in with an open mind, an open heart. And I think that's what you really need to be successful in recovery.
Yeah, for sure. Beautiful. All right. Yeah. I'm looking forward to her 1 year, because I'm going to make her a really cool chip, but she now knows because I just said it on TV. Anyway, so what we're going to do now is we're going to allow them to just, ask us questions, and Jennifer and I are just going to start sharing, and bear with us. This is our first time doing this particular format, and so whoever would like to go first.
I would like to know is, how do you distinguish between your alcoholism and your intuition? I struggle with that, you know what I mean? So I know I have a disease that likes to lie to me, and but at the same time I know that I do have my own gut instincts, but right now I just really do have a problem distinguishing between the two of them.
Okay. I'll go first. That's a really good question. To me, alcoholism is not just about alcohol. Alcoholism to me is about the desire to use something or someone outside of me to control, manipulate, or change the way that I feel. Either to shut me off, or to give me more, or to numb out. And so I could do that without even putting a pill or alcohol or anything into my system. I could do it with spending. I could do it with sex. Mm-hmm. I could do it with, if my mind says this is a solution, and I come up with a problem that's the only solution for that problem, that's how I know I'm in alcoholism in my mind, because I'm telling myself what I think I'm supposed to be like, what I'm supposed to have, how people are supposed to treat me. My whole life is in that moment about being on, pushing, manipulating, getting, comparing, and so I know when I'm not in my right mind, right? Because I'm not truly comfortable in my own skin, and I feel alone, and I feel either greater than, better than, or less than. And because I'm uncomfortable enough, because I could be uncomfortable thinking I'm better than you, just like I can be uncomfortable thinking I'm not as good as you. Because I found that sweet spot of peace and love and tolerance is just being equal with you. But yeah, when I'm in my alcoholism, I have angst, a little anxiety, or a lot of anxiety. I have shame, or I have depressing thoughts, or anger. I have judgment. I have resentment. I have it's going to be better. I have stress. I'm pushing myself too hard. That's how I could tell when I'm not on the beam, when I'm not in alignment. And I'll say this last thing. This is, like I said, I grew up with such shitty programming that there's so many years of just, there's this old saying, you can't ask a fish how the water is because the fish will say, what water? Every thought I had some alcoholism to it. It was just because I grew up like Kira, idolizing using substances or being all together rather than being true to myself and really loving myself. And so I would say it's one of those things. It's kind of like your relationship with a higher power changes over time, your relationship with yourself changes over time, and your understanding of alcoholism changes over time. You start to recognize the road gets narrower, and you start to recognize, you know what, this is part of my alcoholism. Mm-hmm. And you know what, this is actually me, doing what I feel authentically, or being in a higher power's will, or anything like that. This is me doing the next right step. This is me feeling good and purposeful, and then this is me running the show and having, having that kind of attitude. And I think it's great because it is really all between our ears, right? So it's important to just keep defining and getting more clarity for yourself. But to me, the gauge is always, how do I feel? Mm-hmm. Because if I'm not at peace, I'm running something. Mm-hmm. I'm running something on myself, and I'll be defensive. I'll be irritable. I'll be stressed, I'll be overtired, because there's something I'm running on, and it's not authenticity and my higher self. Would you like to answer it?
Yeah, I was just thinking about that. I think when I think about alcoholism, when I'm in my alcoholism, or when I'm actually tapping into my intuition, alcoholism, it feels, like Lisa said, it feels obsessive, right? Mm. And we say a lot of times, feelings aren't facts, but at the same time, they're pretty good indicators, right? Yeah. Indicators of what? I'm not really sure. To each their own, and their own journey and their own path. But I think that typically when we are embracing the idea of pursuing recovery in some way, right? Like it's new, right? So it's uncomfortable. So that feeling of uncomfortability is a different feeling of uncomfortability than we're used to experiencing prior to our embracing this idea of recovery, right? So we like to know, I think there's this human thing that we like to know what's going to happen. When I do this, this is going to happen. Like there's some comfort in that, right? Even if whatever's going to happen isn't comfortable or it's bad, right? Isn't that part of the problem? Like we lived a certain way for such a long time. Like we responded intuitively to situations, like, didn't we? So, but it's about doing something new and doing something different. And so that self-awareness is huge, right? And in being authentic to my situation, people, places, things, circumstances, it's like really tuning into myself and like, okay, like this is different, right? I've never felt this feeling before. Like, how do I kind of navigate this situation, this life experience, whether you're considering opportunities for yourself, you're interacting with people that are doing different things than the people you are used to interacting with, because we're doing different things. We're living life differently. So the logic would tell me that I'm probably not going to be hanging out with a lot of people that I knew before. So there's a lot of fear there. But the obsession, like this obsessive nature, when I have a lot of anxiety, when there's something that I just want to do because I want to get it done, or because I'm uncomfortable, so I just want this moment to pass, or I'm used to doing this. I mean, things are going well, and all of a sudden they're uncomfortable. I've got a lot of moving parts in my life, so now all of a sudden I want to kind of grab the steering wheel one more time and start doing what I'm used to doing. But it's like rewiring our brain, right? So even from a scientific point, like our neuroceptors are going to respond differently to different environments that we're in. So I don't know that it's that feeling of angst. It is definitely that obsessive nature where I feel like I don't have a choice.
And it's all up to you.
Yeah, because that's
Somehow.
not true. We
It's
do
all up
have
to
a
you.
choice.
It's all up to you.
Yeah, totally. We have a choice.
Nobody understands you.
Oh yeah, we totally have a choice, right? It's choosing something that we're not used to choosing, right?
You know, that brings up a good point too. I had to, just because you have a feeling that is not peace doesn't mean in and of itself that you are choosing alcoholism.
Right.
You know, that we have to learn to be comfortable being uncomfortable. This is something we weren't learning before. You know, we had a feeling and we were wanting to do a thing. There wasn't any, okay, how do I be with this so that I can express these feelings rather than immediately try to stuff them and pretend that they don't exist. I love what you said, that the feelings are there for a reason. They're an alarm clock. They're letting us know that there's something that is not necessarily in alignment. But this is our opportunity then to grieve things we didn't grieve, to feel things we didn't feel, to question some of the shame tapes that we had, that we accepted, maybe because of something somebody else said, maybe because of our interpretation of something that happened, maybe because of something we just told ourselves about ourselves with our overdeveloped sense of responsibility of who we're supposed to be in charge of and all the things that were, because I see you. You know, I was a hero child too, man. I had the sister to take care of, and my brother, and so I get it. So I would say that emotional sobriety and intuition is sometimes crying. It's sometimes getting angry for a moment to find out why you're angry. It's expressing that something's a fear for you and not letting it drive your bus and not letting it be stuffed. You know, like, how do you know when you're in alcoholism or intuition? Where are you headed? Are you focused on the solution? Are you wanting a solution? Or are you wanting to be on a pity pot? Are you focused on the disease? You know, because the truth is, I would love to say, you know, with 23 years that there's no alcoholism left in me. And I promise you there's alcoholism left in my consciousness, because it's it's part of my programming, you know. It's something that I delicately keep, and not so delicately sometimes, keep working out like knots in my hair. And so and that's why it's so wonderful. Just keep focusing on the solution, keep focusing on people who are focused on the solution, and focus on what resonates for you, and you will take your alcoholism into places that it can't go, and you'll heal. So give us another one.
I have one.
Okay.
So recently I had a family member who I used to party with a lot. She wanted to come stay with me for the weekend, and I love her to death. Like I really wanted her to stay with me. So, I consulted with some other people in recovery about this issue that I'm having, because essentially I love her and I want her to be with me, and stay with me and stuff, but how do I basically navigate this? So I was advised that I have to set boundaries, and I have to know, what I'm okay with, what I'm not okay with going into it, and share those with her before she comes. And thankfully, she was so understanding, and she told me that she was really proud of me for doing that and that she loved me. But my question to you guys is, what if I have a family member or a friend who I try to set these boundaries with that doesn't respect them? What do I do then?
Okay. So I used to believe that boundaries were things I set to control other people. Of course I would believe that, because I always wanted to control other people. And then I went to a meeting once, a support group once, and what I heard was that a boundary isn't something that you set to control the other person. A boundary is where you tell people, this is what resonates for you and this is what doesn't. And that if it's okay with them to go with what resonates with you, then great, then the two of you can do something together. But if what they want makes you go against what resonates for your highest good, then you have to be willing to let them go and let the situation go. And this is how we learn to be more empowered and to take better care of ourselves. And plus, since it's a total misnomer anyway that you can control anyone, and unless they want to be controlled, and even then you're not really controlling them because they're wanting you to be, okay. But it's a whole other subject. But because we don't really control other people anyway, and because a lot of our alcoholism is being others focused, outside focused, anywhere but here, anybody but me, anytime but now, believing that something outside of us can make us feel better, believing that something outside of us is the reason for our angst or for our discord. What happens is that in setting these boundaries is that we start to come into this present moment more and start to find out intuitively and authentically what is our real yes, and kind of like to do as a connection of both of your questions for a second is that there is a saying that people who grow up in dysfunction or alcoholism or any kind of like divorce or trauma or mental illness or anything, that they guess at what normal is. And so I had to say, hey, and just run things by people that I trusted their judgment and say, so this is the situation. This is what I'm thinking. Is this okay? Is this okay to set this kind of boundary? Is this okay to say, this is what I need, and to let the chips fall where they may? Because I was always of the impression that I was being greedy or selfish or narcissistic or whatever if I took care of myself, right? And at the same time, I also felt overwhelming responsibility for other people's feelings. Like, I'd apologize if somebody had a feeling. Like, I would apologize for their feeling. And it's just so ridiculous. I'm telling you, we change so much that when we think about who we were, we go, God, you want to go back and pinch and go, Lisa, don't do that. But I did. So you can imagine the chaos my inner world was like. I was constantly feeling responsible for your feelings and not wanting to take care of my own feelings and for like being that person. And so when you have all that headspace going on, you could see why it's really difficult to set a boundary. You're so afraid of not being liked. You're so afraid of somebody, whatever. So when we find out first, what is it that resonates as healthy for us and right for us, then there's this cute Dr. Seuss saying, which I love, and it's say what you mean and mean what you say, because those who matter don't mind, and those who mind don't matter. And when you start to recognize that you want to have people that are going to support you in your growth and your empowerment and your highest good, that maybe you learning to set your boundaries allows you to not only teach people how you want to be treated, but also to let people show you really where they're at and how they really feel about you, because we want to protect our sobriety. We want to protect our sobriety because it's this fragile thing in the beginning. Mm-hmm. We're so impressionable, and we have so much stuff on the inside that when other people are negative or advocating for addiction, we could be in the wrong headspace one day and go, you know what, I'm just going to join you. I'm just going to do that. So learning first, what is it that resonates? Asking other people what resonates to people who are also focused on healing and are not going to judge the situation in this all or nothing, black or white way. And then the last thing I'll say is because in setting boundaries, we end up having fears of not getting what we want, losing something that we think we have, and being judged, right? Like, oh my God, she might not like me. She may not want to come. She might be offended, whatever. For me, a really good tool is to write out my fears, to say, okay, well, this is what I'm afraid is going to happen. And to get to the other side of it, to say, okay, not that I would choose for this thing to happen, but just for shits and giggles. Let's just say this person decides, you know what, I'm no fun, and they don't want to spend time with me. Is that really the worst thing that could happen? Mm-hmm. Because do I want to really be with a person that would decide to not hang out with me because their addiction is then that much more important to them than I am? Sometimes our fears are so revealing as to where we've been self-abandoning that it's a healthy tool to get to the other side of fear, to recognize every woman in this room has been through a lot, and we've walked through a lot of fire. So one person not liking our boundary isn't going to kill us. We're a lot more stronger than we realize. Jennifer?
Thank you.
I was just going to say, I think, we change through this recovery deal, right? So I think, and not everybody's going to love how we change, right? And I don't know that I ever had to make a decision to necessarily set a boundary. I think I just realized that there were things in my life that I wanted. Not the house, the car, all of that stuff. That stuff, you can get it or you can't or whatever that is, but that's not the stuff that I was after, right? This space, right? I wanted choice. Right? And I think that just like when we stopped using or drinking, we didn't have to go back and tell everyone we stopped. They figured that out or they didn't because we were no longer showing up in those places and spaces, right? And so we start doing these things, and I think that my experience has been that I've always been a new girl in somebody's room, right? Mm-hmm. Moving along, because you're always doing something different. And so in thinking about setting boundaries, I know, especially when it's, and this is back to people that are still using and drinking, right? And so for me, it's, my life is pretty simple. It's very busy, mm-hmm. but it's very uneventful, right? On purpose, right? And then so I lived in the same house for 8 years, and people don't just stop by on purpose. Right? I like my space. And I've had people ask me, well, what if they were having a problem and they just wanted to come over because they're having domestic problems at home, like of a volatile nature. Don't bring that to my house. There's people you can call that are equipped professionally to handle those types of situations. When that subsides and you want to give me a call, I'm your girl. But for that, that is not for this period of time, right? Like where I choose to kind of show up because I'm probably not the best person that could handle that the best. And so I had a couple of months ago, I had a friend call me and she said, hey, are you going to be home this weekend? Vegas, from California. And I said, yeah. And she said, well, is it all right if I come for the weekend? And I said, sure. But the next day I discovered she was preparing to detox in my living room.
Oh,
Oh, yeah.
surprise.
And I will tell you that the only reason I did not put her out was probably because it wasn't medically safe. Right? And I've known this person the entire length of my recovery. Right? But that doesn't matter to me. What matters to me, because of that, I really expected a little bit more of that person, right? So you didn't ask me. You didn't let me know all of the information so that I could make an informed decision. Yeah, so I haven't talked to them since, like on purpose. And it's not about trust. It's just, I just don't want that in my house. I have kids, you know, they're older, obviously, but yeah, I just don't want that in my house. And so, and it's not because I'm uncomfortable being around alcohol. I'm absolutely not. I know when I go out to places that I have friends that still drink and all of that stuff, but not alcoholically, right, or addictively like I used to, right? So they're still able to do that from time to time and have some order in their life, right? But I just love the peace that I have in my life. I don't like the chaos. I go to the gym. I want to go 6 days a week. I like that, like on purpose, right? And so all of that setting boundaries, I think it has to do with staying your position where you're at, like without acting on that feeling that you need to apologize for that.
Yeah.
Because we know that somewhere in there it's uncomfortable for people. Like they don't know how to navigate that either. How do they do that? Well, you don't have to know how to navigate, but this is what I'm comfortable with. And, and I don't feel like adjusting that. I don't rearrange my gym schedule. I don't plan it 5 weeks out either, right? And I always leave room in my day or my week for things on purpose so that I can say yes. I don't have to have everything booked. I'm not that important to where I feel I need to do that, but I do like structure.
Yeah.
And so I think that, I don't know, when it goes to that, it's about what's important to you right now. And that'll change, right? Our value systems change and our priorities change and your needs are going to change and how you address those and meet those are going to change. And so, I can't depend on everybody else to understand, right? I can't expect them to really love it. If my kids are plan poorly, I don't put my cape on and like show up all the time, and it took me a long time to get to a place where I really don't feel bad about that. Like, not at all. And it's such a great feeling to be able to kind of be in that space. But also I know that honestly, like, I'm just a better person when I'm taking care of myself inside and out. And if I can remember that, like, I don't need to explain that to everybody, but knowing that, no is a complete sentence. Some people might not handle that. No, I just can't do that today. Like, that's even a little more, right?
Yeah.
And so it's a little softer of a blow.
I like to picture.
Yeah, absolutely.
I like to picture that whole example about, how do you save somebody who's drowning? Well, you have to make sure that they don't want to drown. Like if you jump into the water and they flail around and they punch you in the face, you're both going to drown. But if they actually surrender with you and you can help guide them to the shore, then they want to be saved from drowning. And a lot of times people will say, because I know this, I did it too, people will say they want help, but they really want you just to co-sign the drama. They really want you to be okay with what they're doing and understand why they're staying in the abusive relationship. Why, right? And so I think that learning to be authentic and true to yourself, you give from your overflow and you attract people who want the solution. You stay in the solution and you live by example. And I, to this day, like, I'll talk to anybody who really sincerely wants a solution. But if somebody wants to dump on me, that used to be my that used to be all the time. I used to be that person. They used to call me, like, what they used to call it, they go, Captain Save-A-Ho. Like, I had like a cape growing out of my spine, you know, and like, all somebody would have to do is say, Lisa, I have a problem, and I would feel responsible and want to go fix it, you know. There's something about just leading and just saying, you know what, this is what I feel is right, and to join with people who really want to take the next step. And I'll do anything to help another person that wants to heal. Anything. Because that's the most powerful experience, to see the light go on. But if somebody wants to just yeah, and whatever, then and they just want to defend the addiction, then go defend the addiction, because if I focus on you focusing on your addiction, eventually I'll be focused back on the addiction too. Okay, and so right now we're going to go to break. Please remember that the opinions expressed here are strictly those of the people who gave them and do not represent any 12-step program or should replace your own intuition or professional medical advice. See you in a bit. Welcome back to The Real Recovery Show. Remember, you can watch us on Facebook, YouTube, Amazon Fire TV. You can listen to us on the PHLV radio app, or you can get our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio. And if none of that means anything to you, or if you can't remember everything I'm rattling off, just go to themeetingspace.com, to The Real Recovery Show, and all of our episodes are posted there every week. And so before the break, we were talking about boundaries and about not being better than or less than, and answering questions. And so now we're back to answering more questions. If somebody would like to ask one.
Yeah, I have one. So I'm in a relationship.
Okay.
And so my boyfriend and I were in addiction together.
Okay.
We're both now sober. But of course, we come to bumps in the roads, you know, but my question is just like, how do I deal with my partner that doesn't want the same type of recovery that I have, like that I do? Like, we don't want the same kind of recovery, and it's actually quite difficult because I'm very active in my recovery. I love to be of service to anybody that needs help. That's a passion of mine, and he doesn't feel the same. And so a lot of times he might feel neglected. Or he feel like, oh, you'll help them, but you won't help me, or you'll give them a ride, but I have to take an Uber, you know what I mean? And just our recovery isn't the same. So how do I navigate that? How do I deal with that? I'm having.
Well, so it's really interesting. I had this experience once where I was in this relationship with somebody, and I felt like I was way more spiritual. And I started giving him books that he should read, not could read, should read. And I even was willing to read them with him, for him, at him, whatever. And man, this is like a long time ago. So even books like a lot of Wayne Dyer stuff, and then Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, because I was like, you need to communicate better and whatever like that. And I was so sure that the problem was that we were just not on the same page when it came to that stuff. I was so sure. And so I felt very, very self-righteous about it. And then one day I went into a meditation, And I truly sought, what do I do? How do I see this differently? And shockingly, I got a guidance that said, why don't you look for how they are doing it right? Why don't you look for how it's maybe different, but maybe it's still valid? And so one of the things that I did was, I prayed, I meditated, I even used the word God. He didn't like the word God. And I had a whole period of my life where I didn't like the word God, but that was the past as far as I was concerned. And he should be on the same page now. And so instead, he was a DJ and a producer and a problem solver, very much, very good at that. And my intuition said, why don't you look to see how he's already listening to his intuition? And so I started to see how when he had a problem, he would go online and start to search for things and know exactly how to find what he needed. Or when he would DJ and the room energy would change, he would know intuitively what to do with that. And he would trust himself. Even when drunk women that wanted to have sex with him, if they could just play their song, would go up to him, he was like, nope, I know what I need to do. And he was very strong in that. And I would not have seen that before, And there's something about being able to see someone's light and what they're doing right that helps them to, in their awakening and their spiritual path and in healing from addiction, more than any of those books probably could have helped, to really trust and to have faith in that. And so eventually, I like to think I had a little part of that because my ego, but he eventually did start to call his intuition God, and to really emphasize and talk about it because he was able to see for himself. As I said, he said, you know what, you already do. You already listen to your intuition, and this is how I see. But it taught me a lot, and to not compare. That being said, if the effects of what someone's not doing is putting them in a position where they're not participating in the communication, the honesty, if they're acting out, maybe not by actually using the drug or the alcohol, but they are checking out with lots of video games or lots of TV shows and not being present with you. If they don't have an outlet and they make you their one-stop shop and they're not processing their stuff, I would say you could speak to the thing rather than the all or nothing. You're not doing what I'm doing and I'm doing what everybody should be doing. Because when I first started really focusing on my recovery, as I have heard so many people have the same attitude, you want to shout it from the rooftops, man. You're feeling so lit up and so on fire, and you just see so many changes and so much yummy good that you think everybody needs this. And I wanted to tell my family, friends, exes, all the people, and surprisingly, nobody wanted to hear any of that. But when we are seeking to understand, seeking to join, we come from love and tolerance, and at the same time learning boundaries and learning how to stay on our own side of the street and take care of ourselves and say, if we're going to have a healthy relationship, we need to learn to communicate better. We need to do this stuff. And then the last thing I'll say is, and this is just the truth, sometimes people grow with you and sometimes people don't go with you, and so if you keep focusing on your own healing, they may end up feeling the need to speed up a little bit and step up so that they don't lose you. Or they might feel that they don't really want recovery like that. And you guys might not have the compatibility and whatever, and may end up being friends. You just don't know, but that's okay, because future you will deal with that. And future you will have so many more tools and insights and self-love That future you, if future you is not supposed to be with future him, then future you will feel right about that next step. And so you don't even need to worry about that. But definitely bloom where you're planted and recognize that everybody has their own path and their own stuff going on that they need to heal. And in the relationship, love and tolerance and looking to see how they're doing it right can make a person feel much more welcome to join you in what you're doing as well. So I hope that helps. Jen, do you have anything or?
Oh, no, I was just listening to you, and it's hard, right? Like, everyone chooses their own path, right? And so, like, I can tell by listening to you, like, you're on fire. You're so excited. And by all of the people that you mentioned that you do things with and learn from and are mentored by and do this work with in the community, and I'm sure you are busy, like, every single day of the week, right? And that's awesome. Like, I used to be like that too. I was like, wow, I was always somewhere, and I used to fellowship at church and the rooms of recovery and do a lot of community events out there, like outreach and different things. And then my daughter's father said to me, you helped those people more than you helped this house. I was like, but I also knew at some point that, we had begun to do things differently. Right. And this is not, I just say, so, and how do I navigate that? I don't know. Like, I'm a firm believer, especially in relationships, that you're continuing to get to know and learn not only that other person, but yourself.
Yeah.
And over time, we change and we grow, and relationships are where we get to see all of those things or learn all of those things, or our strength comes from those things. And life's not a piece of cake. It's not always Friday night dates and flowers on your birthday. Sometimes it's like, don't buy me those flowers. Like, I'd rather go get tacos at Roberto's on taco. You know what I mean? Like, really, like, sometimes the money's that tight. But I say this to say, it's different. So for me, because of what I know about myself, it's super important that I connect in some way, because somebody told me this. Sister Jennifer, the man that God puts in your life is going to have to understand how important it is for you to help his kids.
Yeah.
Right? And I listened to that, and I had that. And then when I went home and I heard exactly what I just told you, and I was like, oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And I had not been knowing, I'm a firm believer in commitment, and staying and working on things and trying to, to navigate this process. A relationship is a big deal. And but I didn't know. So your future self knew, like, I didn't even need to make that decision for myself.
Right.
And so and that's not to say that about your relationship or your situation, but there are certain things about my recovery that that are from the core, right? And it's in alignment with your gift. Your life, is in blooming where you're planted, and you might look up and you might find yourself on another hill. You know what I mean? I don't even know sometimes, but we love that. We love helping others. We love giving this gift back. And so I say, like, finding that time, like in the relationship, I'm learning to do that over time, to save some of myself or give the first part of myself or whatever life kind of throws at me, but some of those things I can't change. They are who I am, right?
Yeah, right.
And that's okay too.
Yeah. I think it's a really good point too, to remember that you guys used together. And so you guys didn't necessarily know sober each other. You didn't know. When I use drugs or alcohol, there's a lot of falseness happening, because I'm saying things that I'm mentally lubricated, and it's affecting what I'm saying. It's affecting what I'm feeling. It's affecting how much I'm sharing. I kept people kind of at an arm's distance, and because I had so much stuff that I felt when I would look at this stuff, that I really didn't feel like anybody would really love me. I didn't feel like I could love me, And so addicted you met addicted guy, right?
Actually, no. Like, we met, like, right before I went back out. We were sober when we actually met, but it was very briefly. And
Okay.
then when I had left,
Okay.
then we had ended up going.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. So you guys went together out.
Yeah.
You went out.
Yes.
Like, not out to dinner, like
No.
on a date. But it's like, hey, boy meets girl, let's go out. And so you didn't really have a chance to know yourself,
No.
to get to know him, for him to know himself, and so just keep in mind that whether or not this relationship is one that grows with you or doesn't, ultimately, you could still love a person without being in their life every day and being, in a relationship, a romantic relationship. I wish somebody, or maybe people said it, but I didn't hear it, but listen, I wish I knew that a kiss wasn't a contract and that I didn't have to stay forever, because the idea of abandonment, the feeling of misplaced ideas of loyalty, of misunderstandings about what love really was, guilt, shame. I'm never going to find anything better. Nobody's going to understand me. Nobody's going to love me like this. The sex isn't going to be as good. These ideas have kept me in a relationship that really wasn't for me. It's just God was out in the parking lot honking his horn, going, all right, already, let's go. And I was going, but I need him. He needs me. And so give yourself permission to put your recovery first, no matter what. Put your recovery first. And all good things will be added on to that. And if we put the guy first, or we put the job first, or we put what we look like first, how much money we have first, etc., we will not be sane. We won't be happy, we won't feel fulfilled, and we won't have that sense of purpose. Next.
Thank you.
I have a question on just like meditation.
Okay.
For me, I feel like, my whole life I thought meditation was this practice of being present, and, you meditate to, feel in the present moment. And that's how I meditate. And lately, like, sometimes when I practice that, like, I come out of my meditation and I do feel more present, but it's like I don't feel like, I got like real guidance or like real fulfillment from that type of meditation. And, I hear you talking about seeking a lot and using meditation to do that. And I just want to know like how you guys meditate and how to meditate and seek information, from my higher power, or like, am I correct in feeling like there are different types of meditation? I'm just trying to figure this out.
Do you want to go first or me?
I could if you want.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So, when the beginning of, some people pray, right? Some people meditate. Some people pray and meditate. Some people do a lot of different things, right? So I never used to do like meditation. I was a big fan of like really consistent, and my prayer life is huge, and it's not just at church. It's like in the morning, and that's kind of like my time. But like I started to learn probably about 4 years ago, and I did this workshop, and I was like, God, like there's this whole other thing. And then I was on this hike, and they wanted to meditate, and I'm closing my eyes around all these freaking addicts. I'm like, what? And I was like, wow. And so the experience for me was so surreal. I felt like I was watching myself have this experience, right? And so for me, it's about this, it's about clearing my mind, right? And so sometimes maybe like for me, prayer is more about like my part of the conversation, right? My focus, what I'm learning, what I'm thanking for, what I'm asking God or my higher power to help me with for that day. And then meditation for me is sometimes about the pause. It's about the reset. It's about the disconnect from my environments, my feelings of responsibility, emotional pressures, clearing the space in my head, but absolutely being present, right? So I think that looks different over time. I know I say that all the time, but that is just my experience. Like, it changes over time. So now I do yoga. Okay, I don't even want to say that out loud, but I do yoga. And what I'm learning in there is when they talk about that, I love it. I used to make fun of people. And I do that, and I'm sorry, but I did. And so but there's a part about connecting to your breath, right? A certain amount of stillness, right? And then readying ourselves for what's next. So who knows what? And then they have all these meditation apps. There's 1,000 people that you can listen to. If you don't like their voice or how fast they speak, you can go to the next one, right? I think it's about connection. Yeah. So I think it's to that person, but seeking, and I think meditation is where we receive, maybe, or we prepare ourselves to. That's just for me, right? And it changes.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. There's a lot that you said that now I don't have to say. But there's a couple things I want to add. One is I used to treat meditation as kind of like I used to treat alcohol and drugs. I wanted to change the way I felt, and I wanted to not think. And so I wanted to check out, but I wanted to check out using meditation. And so to me, it's been incredibly important that I learned how to be in my own body, that I learned how to be in this present moment. And so there's different goals in meditation for me. I will always start to feel better and naturally get more clarity as I'm willing to let go of the stories that I'm running in my mind. And I don't mean silence them. I don't mean, that's it, I'm going to close my eyes and I'm not going to think a thing. Shit, it happened. Okay, I'm going to do it again. I'm not going to think, and there's a thought. There's an old adage that whatever you do, don't picture a pink elephant. And then the first thing that happens is you picture the pink elephant because you got to picture the thing you're not supposed to be picturing. And so oftentimes, more often than anything else that I've ever seen as the challenge in meditating is that people believe that the goal is to stop their thoughts completely. And so you could hurt yourself, like literally focusing on just not thinking. It's not the point. The point is that the mind that wants to keep generating issues and generating problems and trying to go, okay, this is a problem I'm generating, I need a solution, and and it's literally going and vibrating so fast that we cannot be comfortable, we can't be still, we can't enjoy the moment. Because of all of that, we want to be able to say, the real issue isn't that I'm thinking, the real issue is that I'm telling myself stories. I'm telling myself as if they're true. I'm running on this stuff. I think that there are problems. I think I know what the problems are, and I'm asking for specific solutions to specific problems that I've generated. And so I'm up in this monkey mind. And so what I need to do is I need to turn it over. I need to first say, you know what? I put a question mark on the end of everything that I'm telling myself right now, and I'm willing to be wrong. I'm willing to be wrong about all of it. Right. And when the mind says, okay, if you're willing to be wrong, there's just this calm that starts to happen because it takes a great amount of energy to keep invested in our stories. And so when we're willing to turn things over to a power greater than ourselves, to a higher consciousness, to your intuition, to your gut, to your authentic self, to the universe, to the goddess, to God, to Jesus, to whoever, to Holy Spirit, when you're willing to seek that there is something that knows better than the story that you're running on yourself, the actual seeking is already the relinquishment of the investment in the story, and the mind starts to let go. And so as it starts to become more still, clarity starts to come. they say that prayer, and I know Jennifer was just saying, prayer is starting the conversation. It's talking to God. We have to be careful that in what we're asking, that we're not talking at God. Like, I already know the problem, and I already know the solution choices. So should I move to California or should I move to New York? Rather than should I even move? Rather than being willing to be the student, willing to be the one that's being guided, willing to be the one that's being taught. And so the second part of that then is, now that I'm in the right state of mind to be taught, whatever's left that still is with me, I'll then say, okay, I'm going to ask you questions. I'm going to ask something, and I'm going to be with it. Because now I'm not up in the monkey mind where everything is just chaotic. Now I'm actually seeing, and we were talking about this earlier, how I really feel about this thing. Now I'm more willing to be honest about what I really want, what's really going on. Now I'm more willing to be aware that maybe there are other possibilities and solutions. And because I'm being honest, because I'm seeking guidance, because I'm willing to seek direction, I will start to recognize, you know what? That doesn't resonate with me. That's been a no. And in fact, when I was up in chaotic monkey mind, I knew it was a no. I was just rationalizing and justifying and trying to build the case against what my intuition was already saying. And so the whole purpose for me for meditation is it's the opposite of checking out. It's the opposite of self-medicating, numbing out, and being anywhere but here. It's saying, okay, this is when I'm the truly most authentic, and I'm going to be honest to my innermost self about what's really going on, and I'm going to see what resonates. Does this feel like the next right step? And, at first there may be like, is that really my intuition? Because that sounds too good to be true, or whatever. But if you stay with it, you will find that you'll get clearer and clearer and clearer. And by making that conscious connection, sometimes you'll hear clear-cut direction, and sometimes what you'll just get is a lot more clarity. A lot more clarity where you just know, it's just an inner knowing, and you know the next right step. So I really appreciate you guys coming on the show. Thank you so much. I wish we could get to all your questions, but maybe we'll do this again because this was so much fun. And thank you for joining us today on The Real Recovery Show. We'd like to give a special thanks to our sponsor and gracious host, PHLB Radio, here in Las Vegas. See you next week.